Hello, I'm Richard Gentle, and it's a pleasure once again to be invited to speak at this year's conference. I'm going to talk about my personal journey through some of the Seth material and how I've both applied and still endeavour to apply Seth's teachings in my daily life. I also want to discuss a dilemma which many of us face. How can we believe and be sure that what we're being told is true? What if it's all made up, and what if it only works for certain people and not others? What if it doesn't work for me? These are just some of the questions that arise in us and represent the doubts that hold us back in fear of the unknown reality, and we end up sitting on the fence not knowing which side to come down on. And for all the knowledge that Seth imparted both to and through Jane Roberts, how come she couldn't accept and apply some of it in her own life? Don't get me wrong, this isn't a criticism of Jane, for without her and Rob we'd never have the deep, powerful and exceptional information that we have received. But there is an implication for us here that affects all of us, and perhaps I could sum it up in a different way. If Jesus took human form and announced himself as he stood in front of you, perhaps in the form of a child from a different culture to your own, could you truly believe it was him? I'm not saying this to imply a simile between Seth and Jesus. I'm simply trying to ask, why is it so difficult for us to trust something that we say we're willing to believe, even when we acknowledge the source being of the highest order? It's often because we want a very specific and tangible proof, something physical, something miraculous, made manifest in line with our own understanding and expectation of how something exceptional should show up in our experience. We also want to be able to demonstrate it to others and reproduce that as proof that what we have understood we can actually reproduce and represent. If I asked the universe for red paint and got delivered yellow paint, would I shout that I didn't believe that God existed because God didn't give me what I asked for? Or would I check on the way I made my order? And yes, perhaps I do want to challenge you, but no more than I want to challenge myself. And what about going from teacher to teacher in our quest for answers to solve many of our problems? At what point do we say, I'll give it a go myself? Seth gives us the tools to create the realities we prefer to experience, but like a car, you cannot expect it to drive itself. Well, not quite yet anyway. You have to stick it in drive and move in the direction you want to go. Furthermore, do not expect to arrive at your destination instantly. You know it takes a number of steps and processes coupled with distance over time and any hold-ups along the way. It's not good enough to shout at your car and say, "Hey car, I live in a spacious present, be at my destination immediately," because your spacious present is a psychologically extended moment point in a physical bubble of time-based, linearly perceived reality, and it's this way deliberately and for good reason. Seth informs us that we have to learn to perceive reality differently, and that we cannot do this if we are using the lenses, filters and tools of the reality we have become used to. You cannot use a torch to look at the sun any more than you can experience a three-dimensional object in a two-dimensional universe, and therein lies our challenge, for us to accept a different way. This demands a leap of inner faith and to perceive and communicate with our universe using non-physical means, to better manage our physical feedback through more control over our thoughts and feelings, and knowing that we are only a small portion expressed through a physical form of who we actually are. We are both participant and observer, scriptwriter and performer. To help us, Seth tells us about several of what he calls frameworks. Most commonly he focuses on just a couple: Framework 1, physical reality, and Framework 2, non-physical reality. He also tells us about the interplay between these frameworks and how we can benefit by understanding this. But he adds quite seriously that we have to have a complete reorientation of how we progress. So then, quite a bit to go on, and I hope that you can join me in exploring these areas more fully. I also look forward to answering some of your questions after the talk, and I leave you with my own little quote: "You can't jump off the fence while still hanging on to it."